How's everyone doing today? This is Chopping It Up Hardcore with Hal Capone, discussion number 66. Today, my special guest is Travis from Song of Zarathrustra, The Book of Dead Names, Blackthorne, Chariots, Gore Seeker, Chabalo, super amped. Song of Z and The Book of Dead Names is huge for me. I still rock that in rotation every week. Uh, Underrated in my opinion. I don't think either one of those bands get talked about enough. Travis, I see you. I'm gonna grab you right now. Hey, Travis,
Good.
what's going on?
Just hydrating.
Yes, me too. um, you can hear me fine, right?
Yep, yep.
Perfect, perfect. I want to thank you so much for taking time out to do this and talk to me, especially on the weekends. I know people are busy on the weekends, especially if they have family or work. So I appreciate you taking time out to chat with me for a little while.
Of course. No worries, man. Thank you.
Usually, first off, what I ask is what got you into punk and hardcore when you first found it, and what were you listening to before you were listening to punk and hardcore as a kid?
Um, I had three older siblings that were 10 to 13 years older than me. So I was fortunate to have influence from them at first, and that ranged from like what would be considered pop at the time. So it would have been like ELO and even Van Halen, but like, being a toddler and hearing Van Halen then was really cool.
Yeah,
Uh, so anything from like that, my mom listened to Motown and like kind of like that current era of country. Um, Shortly after that, when my brothers moved away, by the time I was in like first grade, a good friend of mine named Aaron, who I'm still friends with today, he had some siblings that were younger than mine, but they were just in college or graduating from college. And one of them was a DJ, and that's how they met their, I believe, their partner. And so they would get, like a promo copies of stuff like Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, things like that. So in third grade, we heard Number of the Beast.
yeah,
And that was like a change. Like, okay, I'm into this kind of shit. Got into like thrash, speed metal,
hmm
and then it was through thrash was how I found about hardcore because like a lot of them would always reference like Discharge,
hmm
um, Slayer, and other bands like DRI. They would mention like like bands like DRI, or they'd mention like Black Flag and stuff. So through like Skater Kids in junior high was where I'd discover like what was hardcore. And the one scene that stuck out the most to me was DC. So it was Discord. That was like what it really drove me to like want to be in a punk band.
yeah. I see that an awful lot with, that is kind of my background too. I kind of went from a heavy metal background to a thrash metal similar to yours, and then like you were saying, DRI and Slayer, they would wear punk bands T-shirts, and I'm like, oh, what are these bands? Like, oh, I want to check these bands out, and that kind of turned my head
Yeah.
towards hardcore as well. Um, I had seen a hardcore show though when I was 11 years old in Boston. One of my cousin
I would
friends.
I would hope if you're living in Boston, someone like would tag along there. Got my boy here, my little brother.
I didn't know anything about really hardcore back then, but I got to see SSD and DYS when I was 11 at an all ages show at the channel in Boston. So that kind of
That's
opened my eyes to hardcore way back then.
nice. Yeah, it was more. Uh, there was a place called King's Court in Sioux City, and I always would have to sneak out or say I'm staying with a friend's house. I mean, I was. We're like, we're just going to the mall, and going to see some movies. But we'd go to this place, and it was just kind of like whoever was going on tour through the time. And I mean, we had the most random people come through, everything from like Helios Creed to Helmet on their first tour with Jawbox opening to like Trenchmouth, which had Fred Armisen in it,
Yeah.
to like the Dogface Hermans. It was all over the board. Like Nation of Ulysses with Bikini Kill on their first tours. So that was basically how I was like introduced to her, like what was being thrown at me. And after Discord, it would definitely be Touch and Go
Yeah.
and labels from Minneapolis like Ambrep because it was even closer to us, and it had a feel of like more Midwest. It was like wasn't necessarily all hardcore, but it had the same kind of like energy and kind of a little bit more of a dirtiness to it that I like more than just a lot of punk that was going on at the time.
Yeah. Now you mentioned skateboarder friends. Did you skateboard? Because you always hear the bridge that gaps,
Oh,
listening.
oh no, I sucked. I attempted in fifth grade, and I just would eat shit. So all my friends were like, my close friends were skateboarders. So I would just go and hang out. Like I was more into like illustrating and drawing and shit,
Yeah.
and we would, talk shop about music, but I would watch them eat shit, and I was horrible. No way.
Speaking of thrash metal, what was your favorite thrash metal band back then when you were listening to thrash and stuff like that?
I mean, I guess like if you're using like thrash versus speed, probably was Anthrax.
Mm.
Like Slayer, yeah. But like I think like Anthrax I was into like the most first. I love Metallica and stuff, but like I think Anthrax was like the one, and like they kind of helped bridge for like getting into more hardcore as well, back then. But it was like, but then when I actually did like start buying Slayer cassettes, it was like, okay, it's totally Slayer.
Yeah, yeah.
They were just way more. They were just fucking nasty back then,
Yeah.
compared to. But I hadn't discovered Repulsion yet or things like that. So.
Yeah. Now, were you brought up in Sioux City, Iowa, or were you brought up somewhere else and you kind of moved there? How did that come about?
I was born and raised in Sioux City. I was there until I was 21, and the summer when Zarathrustra broke up, that's when we moved to Minneapolis. It was wild. Like it was this gal named Carrie Priest who was in Makara.
Yeah.
And I was introduced to her once. Like TJ lived in San Diego for a while, guitar in Zarathrustra, and he had seen Makara and like whatever bands that was playing at the time, Guyver One and shit.
Yeah.
And he moved back when we started Zarathrustra. Like I think like our second or third show was like this Quad Cities Fest. So there's all these bands playing, and she was dating Chris, who was starting Witching Hour at the time.
Yeah.
And that's how I met her. And just she happened to move to Minneapolis at some point. Met basically the same people that we met when we'd play through there. And when Zarathrustra broke up, somehow they found out, and she managed to track down where I worked at. I worked at this mom and pop shop, like this camera store in Sioux City. And I just was like, Travis, you got a call. I was like, who the hell would call? It's like,
Yeah.
1998, who's calling me at work? That's so important in Sioux City, Iowa,
Yeah.
And it was just like this Carrie, we met briefly, blah, blah, blah. I'm living in Minneapolis. We heard your band broke up. You guys should move up here. And so we, Jamie and I, the bassist and song, we came up for like a weekend with like the mindset of like what it would be like to live in Minneapolis. And we had a lot of fun. And so we just decided, fuck it, let's move to Minneapolis.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Carrie because she had commented that you guys were roommates for a little bit, and I had talked.
Yeah,
I had talked.
I lived in the closet for a while.
Yeah, her too, which she's just so great, such a nice person. But yeah, she mentioned that she was roommates with you, and I had to ask.
Yep. That was hilarious. God, how many years ago was that now? I don't want to date myself. It was over 20 years ago now.
So when you first started bands, Song of Zarathrustra wasn't your first band, correct? Were you in other bands before that?
Yeah, I had a band in high school called Trike Press that stemmed from I was really getting into industrial, like through Nine Inch Nails I was starting to get into like Throbbing Gristle and things like that. Yeah. And my friend Jason Jensen at the time and I were like, we're gonna start this industrial band, but I didn't have any money, so I don't know how the hell we were gonna plan that. But we couldn't figure out any names, and it came up with like this like combo of like two words that we were throwing around, and they were like Trike Press. I'm like, okay. And then when I actually started a band with my friend John Carter, we just used the name. So it was kind of like this kind of hodgepodge of like AmRep, like maybe a little Jesus Lizard, maybe Nation of Ulysses, it was just kind of like whatever was playing at the time. Like, and then it kind of turned into more of like a Gravity Record sounding thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that's when transitioned to when, into Zarathrustra because TJ had moved back from San Diego.
Now that was the first band you played shows out in?
Yeah. Yeah, correct.
And how did Zarathrustra like kind of get formed from that band? I know that
yeah.
machine that was being used in the beginning. Can you talk about that as well?
Sure. Trike Press was probably together for about 3 years, and Jamie, who was going to be, with Zarathrustra, the bassist, he played bass in Trike Press as well. And TJ used to be in a band called Fisher, and it had Russell on bass, who went on to do Shortwave Channel, Camera Obscura, a couple other bands. I'm blanking right off the bat. Champagne Kiss, they were also on Trouble Man. And anyways, they were in a band in Omaha. They broke up. Two of the TJ and Russell eventually moved to San Diego at different times. Joined the same band. I think TJ joined it. It was Shortwave Channel, and then Russell continued with just a bass. And then TJ called me, and he asked if I'd want to start a band with him because he was moving back. And he asked if there was any drummers in Sioux City that could play hardcore, and that was just like, nope. So that's why we went the route of like, well, let's think of like Big Black, like, fuck it, we're going to use a drum machine then.
Yeah.
He said, do you know anybody who knows how to program a drum machine? I was like, well, my buddy Jamie, I play in a band with him. So we quit that band, and then TJ moved about a couple weeks later, and he bought an Roland R5 drum machine, and we just like, here we go. So then that was just kind of like, well, we were really into like His Hero's Gone and Locust and like Rye Coalition and stuff like that at the time.
Yeah.
So we're trying to at VSS, eventually at VSS, and it was just like, all right, let's try some keyboards. Let's try some of this, and let's see what just happens. And it was weird at first. It definitely sounded like something that was kind of more inspired by like Big Black, but spastic, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Now, did you always have aspirations to be a frontman, a vocalist of a band, or did you try playing instrument, or you found your niche?
I simply just was like, only thing I know I can do is do vocals.
Yeah.
And I'd seen enough bands where there was people that I really liked, and my favorites were like Nick Cave, David Yao, and Ian Svenonius. Like those three were kind of like probably the most inspirational for me when it comes to just kind of like wreaking havoc and something just whatever.
Yeah.
I totally I just bit their style, I mean, the best I could, and then so that was just kind of like I was trying to think of like more things we could do, and that's where like teach yourself how to play keyboard, and I seriously had to write down the keys for like the first 6 months, and then just like I don't need to do that anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
it was just doing it out of necessity, just like fuck it, like I'm not gonna pick up guitar fast enough, so keys work,
Yeah, yeah. Now, when you first played out live, were the nerves there? You know what I mean? Like we always talk about people turning their backs to the crowd to the beginning because just the nervousness is getting out there and playing a live show at first. Was that kind of an experience you had, or were you it was like a natural thing for you?
No, I was in Trike Press just doing vocals and that, and I was usually a pretty confrontational person. I didn't hurt anybody, but
yeah,
people get tackled. You grab them, you scream at them, things like that. So I wasn't nervous about that. It was kind of like, I just got to make sure not to fuck up on the keys. And this is the first time I've been in a band with a drum machine. But Jamie operated that. He just used a foot switch, so he would be on that. And I was super nervous, but at the same time, I was also just as excited because,
yeah,
it was something I actually really wanted to do. Like the songs that were written, because Jamie and I were both fans of what TJ had done.
Mm-hmm.
And, and we loved his guitar playing. So it was exciting for sure.
And the self-titled 7-inch that came out, that was 1998, right? Because you guys formed was it 97 you formed, and then the self-title came out the next year, or do I have those dates wrong?
We started in late 96. That's when TJ moved back, and we got a demo out in March of 97. So we recorded what would be side B. It was that was the drum machine side. We recorded that in 97.
Yeah.
With the Mogus brothers who does a lot of the Saddle Creek bands, because we were friends. I knew a lot of those people in Omaha because it was just TJ lived there, and him and Russell knew them guys really well.
Yeah, yeah.
So we recorded with them the drum machine, and then it was going to be a split with this band from Sioux Falls called Attica Underground.
Mm-hmm.
Which had members of like Floodplain and a handful of other bands. I think Examination of, and you know what I mean? There's like so many bands, like my brain's like, oh God.
Yeah.
It was 20 some plus. But it was going to be split with them, but they were breaking up. And so we were like, we're just going to record another side to it. And this band, Orlock from Richmond, Virginia, broke up, and that had Chris from, I don't know if you remember that band, Hose Got Cable.
No.
Okay, another '90s band from Richmond, but they broke up, and he was a killer drummer. Like he played hardcore. He was super into death metal and like sludge and doom.
Yeah.
You know, he had inspiration by like everyone from like, I don't want to say Mario Rubalcaba, but something was spastic like that, but also like Tommy Lee of Motley Crue.
Yeah.
Like he did these triplets and like cymbal grabs and shit. That was just like, like it was awesome. It was so fun. But he offered to move to Sioux City and fucking like play in our band. We're like why? You know, like why would you move here? And but he knew that we were touring a lot and he liked our band. So
yeah,
got with him, wrote a few songs, and then recorded in Omaha again. And so it's 97 and 98.
Yeah.
To make long story or short story longer than it should have.
Yeah. And then the next things you guys put out was like the Spread the Disease, Split, and Johnny Angel were the next two releases that you guys put out?
Yep. It was those two. Yeah. In that order too. When we broke up by the time the Johnny Angel Split came out.
Oh, yeah. How did you get with Spread the Disease? I talked to Dave a while ago, and I was big fans of Spread the Disease and New Day Rising too. How did you guys get that split together?
Chris, he orchestrated all of that. Now that was the thing. Like all the splits and comps he did,
mm-hmm.
he like decided who was going to be on there. Like that was the same with Jerome's Dream with Book of Dead Names.
Yeah.
Like he's like, hey, do you want to do a 5-inch split? Like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, it's gonna be with this band Jerome's Dream. They're actually playing in your hometown. You're playing in Minneapolis in like a month. You should meet them. Like, okay. So that's how we did it. So it's Spreading the Disease. I can't remember. He told us who they were like ex-members of, and we were just like, yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah. That split's so good too. And then after that, the Discography Volume 1 came out, and it was just those songs from the split and the self-titled that was on that, correct? Is that what it was? Because I think like I still have this. I never got rid of this bad boy.
Nice.
That's what those songs are from, correct?
Those, and then there was two songs that were supposed to be for compilations. It was two versions of The Foot of the Ladder.
Oh yeah.
So there was drum machine version and the version with Dave.
Yeah.
So that came out in Minneapolis when Nick started Blood of the Young, and Book of Dead Names. It was almost the same thing that echoed like how my high school band, where it was like, you know, high school band been around for a little bit, but I can start this band again with TJ. He just called and he was like, I want to get the band back together. Yeah. So we're like, cool, click, and I just quit Book of Dead Names, and I didn't have to, but it was just like I knew I just wanted to focus on the band again because I just felt like we just had a lot more to do. You know, like it ended prematurely, I thought.
Yeah, and just because people were moving away, and is that why you kind of went to Minneapolis to start Book of Dead Names? Is just because, you know, it wasn't the same with Song of Z? You know, is that what made you move to Minneapolis?
Well, Jamie and I were going to move somewhere. We were a package deal. We worked together since I was in a high school band, you know, with him. We just didn't know where. So it was Carrie that kind of, you know, initiated that move to Minneapolis. And it was to form a band with her and Seth, who used to play in a band called Infinity Dive from here.
Mm-hmm.
Who else was in it? Our buddy Jordan and Kevin Pipcorn, who went on and is currently in this band called No Funeral. So it was to start a band with them. And that lasted for like a couple weeks. You know, we just didn't have a spot to practice at and everything. And then Andy from Infinity Dive asked Jamie and I if we'd want to start a band because they were going to be breaking up. And so it wasn't even, that just happened out of nowhere, you know. So as soon as we started a band, I mean, we went through, Jesus Christ. We even had Morgan from Coleman, that band Coleman.
And yes.
He played drums with us for a while before we had the name Book of Dead Names. And then after he was out of the band, this dude Eric Newberg, he was this younger dude, like he would throw in like Afro beats in with like blast beats. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So once he got in the band, we named it, and I think we were together for 6 months. And we had 2 splits out in a 5-week tour.
Wow, no kidding.
Ready to get on the road again, you know.
So. Like scene wise, what was more together as a scene, Sioux City or Minneapolis to you?
Oh, Minneapolis by far, because there's far more people who do shows,
Hmm.
specific shows that have a little range, a little pole. There's only different places to play. There was tons of houses.
Yeah.
Sioux City was, for like punk or anything, was like one person,
Yeah.
and uh, I don't know if you heard of a band called Sioux City Pete and the Beggars, and then there's a band called um, uh, fuck, I'm blanking on their name, but he has this other band with Joe Ross on drums, and he booked Pete was the one who booked a lot in Sioux City after this era when King's Court had closed. We had this place called Cattle Club where I used to volunteer at.
Yeah.
Um, he kind of wanted to keep the stranglehold on that, and then eventually TJ and I and Jamie from Song, when we were still a three-piece, started a thing called the Midwest Power Violence Coalition, and then we just were like, we're booking hardcore bands in Sioux City in basements.
Yeah.
And I met Mark Tolfian because we booked Hail Mary, and that was like in '97.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. So yeah, so that's how we kind of got to meet a lot of these different people, like played with like Young Pioneers and stuff, and kids from Sioux Falls. We were like the closest with. We first 8 shows we played as a band were out of Sioux City. We didn't even play in Sioux City.
Yeah.
Like like some people get really focused on their hometown too much.
Now,
And
now before that hiatus, did you Song of Z do a tour? Like were you across the U.S. before you moved to Minneapolis, or was it kind of just weekend things, or did you do a set tour before you went to Minneapolis?
yeah, we did a handful of tours. We when we first started, within like 6 months,
Hmm.
we were playing every weekend, and at least like a couple times during the week. Sometimes, at least Sioux Falls, Omaha, Lincoln, Madison, etc. We just stayed super busy doing that.
Yeah.
And then we did a 2-week tour with Floodplain from Sioux Falls,
Hmm.
and then a 6-week tour that was just all Midwest and East Coast and such.
Yeah.
And that was the last tour, and we had another one booked, but then we broke up.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were trying to actually write and record a full length in Sioux City, but Dave quit, and that's why the kind of band kind of fizzled. And at one point, Dave Astor, who played drums in Locust, offered to come in and do drums, and we're like, okay, cool. And then thought about it, I was like, that's going to be a completely different drummer,
Yeah. Yeah.
drum style, and we were done at that point. After Dave left, it was kind of like, the interest was gone.
Yeah. Now those first tours, what were kind of the bands that you didn't know of that kind of blew you away when you saw them? Especially like, was there any East Coast like shows where you saw some bands that you opened your eyes and were like, whoa, this band, I never heard of them, but like, and then became friends with them eventually? Was there any bands that kind of, floored you?
There were bands that we were pretty active with staying on top of like groups that we liked, and so we were fortunate enough to play with a lot of good bands, like especially in the East Coast. Like we played like ABC New Radio in the basement with Devoid of Faith and Eucharist.
Mm.
And what else we played? Oh, sorry, here's Murphy. Oh, okay, sorry everybody. We saw like we were into Discordance Access, and
Yeah.
they played in Richmond. Trying to think, man, fuck. There was this band in Chicago called Brass Knuckles for Tough Guys that I really dug, and they had a member who used to be in a band called what was it? I'm Guyver. No, I'm blanking. Man, it's been so long, but we were really fortunate enough. Like people that we were just like, there were some bands that we were just getting familiar with, like Reversal of Man.
Yeah.
And we became friends with them like really quick. We played a show with them in Damod at 43 Chaos. And we stayed at the Reversal of Man folks' house, and like, they took care of us really well. And we met Dave from No Idea Records. We would stay with him as well. Like, it was like we got along well with people from St. Louis. It was like Johnny Angel people, and like people from like who eventually became like Sissy Spacek, like John Weiss.
Yeah.
And then it was like I stayed in touch with Mark McCoy. He had just moved to New York. But yeah, the Reversal Man folks, like those were like, I think it was like New York, St. Louis, and Florida. Those were like the main areas we were like the tightest with people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like Book of Dead Names, you guys played with the same like type of bands like Locust and Combat Wounded Veteran and Reversal of Man.
Yeah. When I lived in Sioux City before I was in Zarathrustra, I would, pen pals with like Justin and those people, because it's just like, if they do tour, like, and if you have any way to get up here, because they would come as far as like Lincoln, for sure before like hitting Chicago or something. But yeah, I try. You know, it's just like there was nothing to do in Sioux City. You know, like I mean, there was places to buy records and there were shows, but there just weren't the shows I wanted to see. You know, I had to go to at least Sioux Falls. So a lot of people we had reached out to prior, and so we were just finally meeting. We were either doing the show or they were doing a show for us. You know.
Yeah. Now
So
with the thrash that you were listening to, did metalcore ever come into your realm of things, like especially
yeah.
city? I mean, what, you know, the Earth Crises or the Hatebreed, was that ever
Mhm.
something that you were influenced by, that you liked, that you went to, and you know, the more
Some of them.
a tough guyish type of hardcore?
Yeah. Well, being, you know, like into metal and at that time when extreme metal was getting big and like Swedish metal was getting big and stuff, like just like the tuning's different and like and it's seeing that transition into like the metalcore stuff. Like I mean, we played with like Coalesce,
Mm.
you know, and like bands like that. Especially at that time, you know, I'm sure you remember. So like mid '90s, especially early to mid '90s and late '90s, like it was just like it was huge, you know. And like if you played a fest, like one of the bands or two of the bands are going to be playing it,
Yeah.
you know, like Disembodied from here,
Yeah.
you know, and like I trying to remember there was a few others. Yeah, then we played this Quad Cities Fest, and on the last day, and it was like the day of like you know like Crudos, MK Ultra, Bronson, Nine Iron Spitfire, Ink and Dagger, you know, like the stacked bill. And so everybody's there. It's like early, it's noon. Everyone's kind of like going through the distros. And a band set up, and there's like, "Hi, we're a new band called Kiss a Goodbye. We're ex-members of Dead Guy and Rorschach." And it was like a record scratch. Everyone like turned and looked, and then they just started, and then it was just mind blowing. You know, like metalcore like that, and like Disembodied and Coalesce were my favorites.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
You know, like they were just raw and like had that kind of a Slayer kind of a sound to it sometimes too.
Yeah, Disembodied was huge for me. I saw him a couple times up. I actually saw him in New Hampshire. I live in New Hampshire, and I saw him up in Rochester, New Hampshire, which was like amazing. I saw him with Converge. Actually, it was like real.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, yeah. I actually currently do a project with Joel Anderson, who played on a couple of Disembodied records. It was when they got back together.
Mhm.
We have we have a project called Half Dead. It's just kind of DVD kind of stuff. We're just still fucking around, but him and like um, Charlie, I know from like Disembodied. So it was just like when Triple Rock opened, it was kind of like it was really interesting seeing like the different scenes of people that wouldn't really mesh or talk with one another did. So it
Yeah,
was like, you know, the three people in like the metalcore straight edge scene that drank, you know, like they were there on Tuesday nights, you know, and then like a couple people from the indie band, you're like, yeah, they're cool. You know, it's like it was awesome. It was, that's how I met a lot of those folks down the road, you know?
yeah, yeah. No, Harvest was big for me. True,
Mm-hmm.
true, and like in that area in Minneapolis. Also, Dave is such a great guy too. He's in that new band Sunset. I don't know if you've ever heard Sunset, but that's really good too. It's like on a Convergence type of sound to it too. But Dave's really great. Harvest was like a huge band for me back then. You know, I have like a huge circle of musical taste with heavy music. I love everything. Whether it be black metal or straight edge music
Sure.
or
Yeah.
primo or you know, everything. I just love heavy music. Also, I love different genres too as well. Like new wave from the 80s is huge for me, and Motown, like you said, like your mom was listening to. I love that stuff. And hip hop, only like boom bap hip hop really for me, not so much the new stuff. But yeah, I
Sure.
have a big, you know, musical palette, I guess you would say.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, there was always like this rule in like the Zarathrustra band was like the first like 2 hours or so. It's just like, can we just have like silence or nothing with any vocals? You know, at most maybe talk radio at most or something. Just because after a while it was like, you know, we liked so many different things, but you're just getting your eardrums like pounded by like really screamy spastic bands. Like, I just want to hear Stevie Wonder right now.
Bob Adams is saying hello from 10 grand.
Oh man, what's up? I saw another person on there mention about like a T-shirt that I gave them. I gave so much shit away. I always like anyone says like that was a good set. I'm like, do you want something? Like I was, you know, like it was. I don't know. That was really cool. It was kind of overwhelming at times where, um, people express how much they liked certain bands I was in, and it's like I'm just some fucking chump from Iowa, you know what I mean? And we worked as hard as we could, and we stood behind it, but it's still flattering to hear like people like um you know just shoot a message or say something about it.
Yeah. That's why I was so stoked to get in touch with you and talk to you, because being from New Hampshire and the Boston area, you know, Song of Z and the Book of Dead Names was really, really big for me. And like I said in the beginning of the
Cool.
introduction of you, like I still jam that stuff all the time. And it'll always, I feel like some of the albums are just so underrated. The Story Unfolds is like one of my favorite albums, like, top
Oh wow.
5 of all time. Like I just love that album. And, this one too is very special to me too, just because it was the first thing it's not the first thing I heard, but it was the first thing I ever got my hands on, and I never got rid of it. So, it's
That's awesome.
it's got some cracks and stuff, and took the test of time, but I never got rid of it.
That's awesome. No, that was definitely when we were really showing like our and wearing our influences on our sleeves. It was like tons of Jehu on that, like Jehu was a huge inspiration. Like TJ had a Drive Like Jehu sticker on his SG in his old band, like I think it was like in '93. And I just remember like it stood out. I didn't know what the fuck it was. And then I think one time they were playing up in Sioux City again, and they were just unloading stuff. But there was a cassette playing, and it sounded badass. And I was like, "What the fuck are you listening to?" And it was like, "Oh, it's Drive Like Jehu." So they became one of my favorite bands, like up there with like Nation of Ulysses and Jesus Lizard went up, and Buttle Surfers, like in my high school era.
Yeah.
And this out of that, like I felt like those bands couldn't do any wrong, you know.
Pete from Sinaloa's on here too, and he said that Song of Z played a basement show in Alston that he set up, maybe 2000, 2001.
Nice. If it was 2000, oh shit. Yeah, if it was around there, then we probably had the drum machine. I think so. No, 2001, we had the drummer again. Yeah. Mark Jorgensen from Infinity Dive and K&B Communique. He became our drummer. And it was wild because we went back to using a drum machine again. It was a Roland R8.
Yeah.
And that took cards, and we used the Doom drums, the Doom toms cards. So we got these like awesome like Neurosis sounding like fucking big cannons.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was sick. And he was like Mark just was like, no, I want to play drums. I want to play drums in the band. And at the time, it was kind of like, I think maybe it was just because prior bands, he had fun with it, but I don't think his heart was in it. And he knew that we were going to tour a lot, and he really liked the band. So he kept like pestering us for like a month. We're like, you're not going to be in the band, dude. And then eventually we're just like, let's just fucking give him a shot. That'll be fair.
Yeah.
And he was there on time and just on it and ready. And it was cool because it launched into this kind of a new way of us writing music. Like you can tell it wasn't as like, I mean, clearly it wasn't as like spastic as like the earliest stuff, but it was like, I don't know, we were trying. It had been a couple years too,
Yeah.
I think getting better, a little bit better at writing parts on keyboards. So I don't know. I think like all three of us were collaborating more together. Jamie and TJ and I with Mark. So that's why like View from High Tides was sounding. Yes, to make sure. Birth of Tragedy to View to High Tides. You can just see how it was transitioning away from really spastic stuff.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to speak about that too, but I'll get back to that. But I wanted to speak about Book of Dead Names.
Playing songs to Outkast. Yeah, dude, I remember Mark would always say like, I want my drums to sound like Outkast. I don't know how that's going to work. Yeah, Mark rules. I love that guy. He was awesome. He's such a fucking good drummer.
Now, Book of Dead Names, you guys did a demo, but did it turn into that 7-inch that you put out with West fucking Triad?
Yeah, it was essentially a demo. It was totally a demo. A friend of Andy's from high school offered to record. Andy used to live in this house called the Sociopath House, which was we're infamously known as where Replacements lived. Like the cover of Let It Be, they're sitting in like a rooftop part of that, like where you would walk into the Sociopath House. They had a recording area in the basement, with makeshift into like a recording studio, and I think that's where they did like that Theoreshka Gull and like Infinity Dive split 10-inch and around that era of stuff. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what the whole deal was, but we wound up recording with this friend of Andy's, and I think at that time, like, yeah, the dudes from Remington, because we were friends with them when we lived in Sioux City.
Yeah.
Um, they handed us like a split that they wanted to have out for a long time. It was like over a year old.
Yeah.
It just kind of just married them because Nick just started Blood of the Young, and I think he just put out the K&B Communicates Evidence or something. So he just kind of claimed it, like, let's just fucking just get this out. So.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and those.
And it was also the split. I forgot. It was also the split. The remaining tracks was the split with Jerome's Dream.
Oh,
So that sounds like fucking ass. You know, it's a small, piece of vinyl, and then like it just demo quality.
yeah.
It's pretty bad.
No, I enjoyed it. So I mean, some of that raw recordings is kind of like still.
Oh, sure. It was just like the guitar sounded just a touch buzzsaw for me, but
Yeah.
Whatever. We played fine on them.
Yeah. The Jerome's Dream split, the big fuck you song, always like was one of my favorite songs, and that was like kind of one of the first things that I had heard from them too, around that era, you know what I mean, because I had seen them at a fest. Well, actually I saw them play with Reversal Man up in New Hampshire with Assuck, and that's kind of what got me in the door to start seeing them and stuff like that. And then obviously I tried to pick up as much vinyl as possible, but the big fuck you is good. And also the Skin, what is it? The Skin is Coming Off is like one of the songs that I like from you guys. You know what I mean? That was
Yeah. So. That had to deal with some gross blister that Eric had while playing drums.
Oh, really?
He's just like, oh, the Skin's coming off. I'm like, well, we got our song title now.
That's amazing. And then the Book of Dead Names came out with a live cassette, right? Like way down the road. Was it just?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How did that come about?
Oh God. Yeah, it was like our the first 5-week tour that we booked. We played WNYU, and we had that recorded there. Like a few friends of ours actually did, like 1919 did, and a few others. We were gonna plan on doing something with it, like a split.
Yeah.
You know, and it just kind of floated around. Like we'd go on tours with other bands and shit, and people like, I still have that WNYU recording. You know, it was good. I really liked that a lot. And then I was messaged online from a dude who does a noise label, like pretty much just like harsh noise wall and stuff.
Yeah.
He was just like, I really dug the band when I was younger, and it would be cool if I could just do a cassette of that, you know. And he didn't think I would say yes. I was like, yeah, sure. No, someone put initiative in putting it out, so that's how that happened. He's like, oh, you serious?
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I wanted to ask about that because, like I said, it was just a few years ago. It was 3 years ago that kind of got put out. I know it's limited. It's probably hard to find now too, obviously.
No, we still got some copies. I'll send you one.
Oh, you do? Nice. Oh, that's awesome. Like I don't want to touch on Book of Dead Names too much because like obviously it's one of my favorites. But 2013, I heard rumors that you guys were writing stuff again, but nothing came into fruition for you guys. What was the rumor that you guys were working on stuff, but like nothing? I haven't heard anything that came out from that.
Well, we have more than half of a full length, but Andy died, so we kind of hard to go back and finish, and he was a big part of like the recording that we were doing. So, so that's what happened. So it's like it can be finished, but it's like it was a really dark time. So we lost Nick from Blood of the Young as well.
Yeah,
a lot was going on, and a lot of chaos. So we weren't in the right mindset to be like, it was just too raw to kind of go back. And I mean, I a few times I kick around the idea of like, like maybe you should just like revisit this, because there's probably like 6 or 7 songs, and then we have some that we did on a Zoom recorder in a space, but it sounded really cool, kind of like in that sense of like how you're bringing up with the live book recording.
Yeah.
We were going to use that as like cool segues and stuff, beef it up a hair, but yeah. So I don't know. I mean, it's just one of those things. It's kind of sore. We have to go and like contact whoever has the hard drive and all this kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, it happened.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that because you know, if there was songs, I was like, oh damn, I want to hear the song.
I do, yeah. I mean, I can play like there's some songs that are far more closer to like 75% finished. At least give you an idea. And then there's some that like vocals are just scrap tracks.
I mean,
So
was it kind of like a progression to like a different sounding the Book of Dead Name stuff? Because obviously Song of Z kind of like evolved into a little different sounding stuff, you know, with
yeah,
A View from High Tides, like that kind of, you know, it wasn't as like you said spastic. It was more melodic,
no, no,
kind of.
yeah. We were trying to incorporate a lot more things that we liked that was in other areas. Just drawing it, like a lot of bands have
Yeah,
done. Um, some would argue that we should have just stayed the route that we did when we started, but again, it was just kind of like, well, so many bands. We just didn't want to get lumped in with a lot of bands because a lot of the shows that we played on our first tours when we got back together as Song, um, it'd be like a 6 or 8 band bill, and everyone sounds like Reversal Man on Orchid.
yeah, yeah,
No offense to them, I love both those people and both those bands. Like they're great people.
yeah.
Um, I just don't want to hear variations of it all the time. It's like cool. I don't know. So
Well, you
that's what we were just trying to be. Yeah, we were just putting a little more thought and like coming at stuff with a different approach. And having Mark as our drummer at the time really helped because
yeah,
he's well versed in like jazz drumming.
yeah.
So
And
that's how I did things.
you guys added another guitar player too, like towards the end of Song of Z too, right? Isn't the last album kind of you guys added another guitar player? Was that kind of before?
Oh, it was after Jamie, our original bassist. Uh, we had that was hard. It didn't seem like he was as invested in the band, and we had like another European tour and a lot of tour offers, and we were really excited. And it didn't seem like he had been excited for a long time, so we asked him to leave the band, which sucked because he's like my best friend.
Yeah,
We're friends, we still talk. So we got Mark Shaw from K&B Communique, and since him and Mark Jorgensen, the drummer from K&B Communique, were together, and they grew up together, they played in bands, like so many bands. So it made sense to have him like suggest Mark.
yeah,
Um, Tad Kubler became our second guitarist. He was in a band from here called Lifter Polar, and then he's currently in Hold Steady with Craig Friend from Lifter Polar. They were both in Lifter Polar. So he was our second guitarist before he moved to New York.
and did that Europe tour? I know you guys were set to do a European tour. Did that happen? And if it did,
Yeah, we went there twice.
oh
Yeah, and we had a third tour booked, and we're like, yeah, like we were like starting to look towards like Australia and places like that were getting a cool offer. Japan,
yeah,
like awesome. Like we were like really committed to like wanting to tour more,
yeah.
especially for cities.
Did you have a sister band that you played that went with you to Europe on any of those tours? No.
No, the first tour we just played, it was 2.5 months. We played just with whoever, and then the second tour, which was nearly 3 months, that was with a band called Metrophone, which had Simon, who went on to form a band called, I can't remember what the band's called, but had Kip from Red Scare and Panthers.
Yeah, yeah,
It was kind of more of a krautrocky in the sense of like maybe Tangerine Dream. It was very synth based, but that's how they actually became friends because Kip, he met up with us and was roadieing with us for a while, and that's how he met Simon, and they just got to talking really well and about everything. Those folks were also in a band called King Kong and the Shrines. So like Haresh from King Kong, we became friends with him pretty early on, and then he kind of exploded for a little bit there on college radio. I remember.
yeah.
It was wild, but he's a good dude.
Now the last thing that Song of Z put out was the split with Race Bannon, right?
Yeah. Yep. You're right.
And did obviously you guys had played with Race Bannon, a bunch of times. I always speak about Race Bannon all the time because they're one of my favorite bands, and I feel like they don't get enough shine too. Just like, sad to say, I never got to see them live, which I'm always kicking the ass for.
Yeah, they were cool. We were friends with them, like both Book and Zarathrustra. We like those folks were awesome. We'd always stay at their house and just they. One of the first times we stayed at their house, they had this room where they just had a pile of CRT TVs, you know,
Yeah.
just a pile of them with whatever that they, some art video they had on or whatever movie.
Yeah.
And they really were into that first Zarathrustra full length, and it's like the Deep Yellow and the Burning Red. I think it's like maybe 3 minutes. They would all get 40s out, and they said that they would slam them, and they would have, and so they make sure to slam them before the song was over.
Yeah.
They said we just super high and they slam a 40 during that song. I was like, okay, those guys are the best. I miss those guys a lot.
Yeah, I would love to get Mike Anderson on one of my talks. I don't think he's on Instagram. He's kind of pretty.
Yeah. We used to stay in touch. We were really good about emailing each other back and forth. Yeah, I haven't talked to him in a while, but I would like to track him down.
Yeah, definitely. I was talking to Vinny from Gospel and Helen of Troy last week, and they had toured with Race Band a bunch of times too. And I've seen flyers with you played with Helen of Troy and Race Band at the same shows and stuff like that. So we were talking about Race Band and as well. Vinny's a great guy as well, and
Yeah,
just like that era back then was just so special to me. Like all the bands that played back then in the late 90s, early 2000s, it just was very special era for me. Do you agree on that? Like just so many bands that kind of, there's new bands now that I really love too, but for me, I know it sounds like I'm an old guy and being this stuff like I'm like, and I hate being like, well, you weren't there. I never say that because that's kind of a weird thing to say, but it was just a very, very special era to me. Do you kind of agree with that? Just that little notch of time?
late 90s. I mean, yeah, late 90s and the early 2000s was really special for me, just mostly because that's when it felt like, I don't want to say getting some recognition, but our shows were a lot better. There was a lot noticeable, and then especially when Bloody Young helped out, and then eventually with Trouble Man Unlimited, that really helped out a lot. And that was our first experience with, like, I remember I had the CD and the artist copies of the Birth of Tragedy, and I had it for like a few weeks. And I remember like, oh, I should call Radio K. It's a local college station.
Yeah.
Like I should call them and see if they would, see if I can send this in. And they're like, oh, we already got it from the distribution, and it's already charting. What? That was my first experience with any kind of like PR, like in-house PR.
Yeah.
And all of that, and just seeing reviews. Like Alternative Press had this issue in 2000. It was like 50 bands that you should hear, and they listed us. Like I was like, it was really cool. It was super bizarre. But it did help, because especially by the time we went to Europe for the first time in England, like this one dude who'd been booking bands for decades. I mean, he booked even like Radiohead ages ago. He booked, White Stripes and stuff, when they were just blowing up.
Yeah.
He read that article, and so he booked us a show in Nottingham. And there's like a core group of folks that we stayed, that like to this day that I stay in touch with from Nottingham, that eventually moved to like London and everywhere else.
Yeah.
But it was that era, and it's special because of just like the friendships, bands that became our peers that we would have just bought their records of if we were just still a fan in Sioux City, like,
Yeah.
Seeing all these countries for the first time, and like kind of getting a different perspective on, I already had my opinion on America, and then it changes even more when you start traveling abroad.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was in a lot of ways, it was really eye-opening, and definitely dear to me, for sure.
Yeah. When you talked about the Birth of Tragedy, like I feel that album is very underrated. It's probably one of my favorite things that, Song of Z put out. I don't feel like it gets enough shine, honestly. It was, in my opinion, I think it was like a little more keyboard driven too, which I liked, because like it was, the self-title and the first splits kind of, it dabbled in keyboards a little bit, but it got a little heavier with the.
It was really TV, yeah. I think a lot of that had to do with just like we did it in like 12 hours. We did it in a really short period of time because we had like a tight budget.
Yeah.
And to be able to get it all recorded and tracked and mixed by a certain time, it was more than 12 hours. I think it was like 2 days. Still, it was like it got finished at 4 a.m. in the morning. You know,
Yeah.
hey, your ears are fucking burnt out. And it was like the drums were pretty buried, and the keys were super up front, and they weren't like that live. Like it was still it was drums and guitar
Yeah.
that was out. The keys were just there to kind of just fill in a right spot. So that was, I mean, it's what it was. I mean, it could have been a really bad recording, but it served its purpose. But it was, yeah. I remember there was like a review in Pitchfork, and the guy was just like, "I'm just waiting for when the fuck Dracula is gonna jump out of the closet." I was like, "That's pretty sweet. That's hilarious." But I get it. But what's funny is that 3 or 4 of the songs are actually from the Sioux City era. We just had to like try to remember them from demos that we made and like restructured them with Mark on drums.
Yeah. Hold on one second. My dog's like moaning for a second. Hey, Jack.
I'm surprised Murphy isn't flipping out. That's my cat. Like he's usually screaming by this point.
I'm actually gonna let him out. Give me 1 second. He's right here. Hold on 1 second.
No worries. He played
Stop.
years up in Canton. Oh yeah, that North Providence Fest. That was awesome. Can't remember what day we played. I think we played with did we, God, what's that band? Black Cat 13. I think we might have played with Black Cat 13 at that Tin Can Fest. I don't remember if Reversal Man was the same day or not. Yeah, I really loved the Northeast US and playing there. I loved playing in Pennsylvania, fucking, I love playing in Boston, New York. Like that whole area, I loved it. It was fun. And like, I just got along with the people. It was easy to get along with the people, I thought, and where some folks, I guess, maybe from the West Coast might get a little put off, or from the Midwest would get put off by, what they consider like maybe abrasive.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, I don't know. Seems like me.
Yeah, I know the East Coast attitude. You kind of get a bad stick with, but I also wanted to talk to you about the reunion show that happened in New York City in 2010. What kind of experience was that for you? I mean, I've seen videos and it looked like it was like a great show.
There was a reunion show first at Triple Rock here,
Yeah.
and then we did one in New York. The one here New York was super fun. A lot of our friends were there, from Minneapolis too, and from like Sioux City, but folks there. It was fun. The one in Minneapolis was insane. Like I had no idea like who would show up. I thought maybe a couple hundred people, but it was almost sold out. It was nearly 500 people there, which was like, it was cool. It was great. It felt like a fest.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like kids losing their shit like they would at a 90s Locust show.
Yeah.
It was fun. Like it was super fun. No, it was, I got back in touch with TJ. We hadn't talked for a while, and we just kind of buried a hatchet. We're like brothers, like we butted heads a lot, but like, we're not gonna like cease being friends ever.
Yeah.
And he's like, I was thinking about doing a reunion show, and my brain was like what? Like I thought that was just gone, and yeah, it just kind of just worked out really easily, and it was super fun. It was like really fun to play those songs again. They were a lot easier than what we remembered.
Yeah. I was. Yeah.
We were like, this is gonna be hard, and we were like, this is cake, man. This is awesome. So that was a good sign.
Yeah. Now will we ever see that again? Now, like 10 years later, no.
We had one booked at the 7th Street entry with local band the Hive. Sorry, fuck. Morgan's gonna kill me. But like I don't know, something came up on TJ's end. Something he wasn't able to make it. And I felt bad because like it was already booked, and then people had like flights booked.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, yeah, maybe we should just not do that again. So
yeah. Now, is there any songs that ever are sitting on the shelf that never got unreleased? Yeah,
there was a 7-inch that we were working on. So there was like 4 songs for sure that didn't get recorded at all.
Yeah,
like they were just uploaded. There was a Blood of the Young compilation or comp song that never came out, and then there's like a handful of demos from Sioux City that have like different variations of songs, so they just totally sound different, or they were like 2 songs that became 2 other songs, like how that works.
Yeah.
So there was a number of songs that didn't get released.
Yeah. I wanted to speak about Chariots too, and congratulations. How did that I know like I don't know, like the sassy aspect of things back then were kind of like big at that time. Did that kind of draw you into being into that band, or you know what I'm saying, like the Red Lights thing and maybe Plot to
Oh,
Eiffel Tower, that kind of stuff was popular at that time. Like, how did you get into that band? And it was just that one LP that you guys put out, and that was it, right?
yeah, it was like that, and then like we had two college radio recordings that we were going to use that had songs that we didn't record. One of those.
Yeah.
No, it was like the band started with the bassist Arthur and I.
Mm-hmm.
He used to be in a local band called Exercise, and so we knew each other, and we were kind of trying to actually go on more of the route of something like, and I hate to say avant-garde or something like that, but more like heavy on the rhythm section, like how like the Birthday Party would be.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be so like focused on like heavy guitar, maybe something more like Neubauten and really wiry sounding guitar. I wanted to do kind of branch off in more areas like that. And that's when I was starting to pick up like more synth pedals and delays and shit. And I wanted to kind of jump into that realm. But it seriously took almost 2.5 years to form into what became Chariots.
Yeah.
We tried out so many drummers and just nothing was just sticking. And then we found this guy, Matt, and he was just freaking solid. He can just play a good solid, he was good. And our guitarist Eric, he I don't know, he's like it's funny because like he's like a big fan of like 90s like stuff from like Jawbox, Quicksand era stuff.
Yeah.
But he's also into like Jesus Lizard, and he really likes country. So it's like so it's just like this interesting kind of like Telecaster kind of like twang to it.
Yeah.
And it just ended up sounding like kind of like a handful of different types of like 90s bands.
Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned Plot to Eiffel Tower because we became friends like right when we had like it was right before Congratulations came up. But we like toured together, and like that's how we became pals.
Oh, no kidding.
Like, yeah, I still stay in touch with those folks, like Chuck and Brandon especially, it's like good people.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know it was a weird era. That's my least favorite era of the 2000s is like I started to get kind of jaded with hardcore and punk, but also I didn't want to completely drop off from playing, all age or DIY shows.
Yeah.
There was always there was so much focus on like over promotion and like playing like a 21 and older type show or at bars more or having a booker and things. And I think it was just everyone was just really hungry because they were seeing bands like that. It was like a new wave of like our AR guys going out to like scout new bands, like how it was in the early 90s after Nirvana and up to like Green Day era. They were all finding those new bands. And then at this time, it was like they were trying to find the new White Stripes. They're trying to find the new Strokes. They're trying to find, like this kind of resurgence of some form of rock or something.
Yeah.
And it was fucking gross, like a lot of the bands it just seemed like they just threw out old principles. And at some points I felt like I was, it's just like, I liked that band. It was fun.
Yeah.
I just felt like I compromised on so much shit at that time, like, so I kind of I stopped playing music for a while, I didn't want to like hate it,
Yeah.
So it was a weird period of time. I agree.
Yeah. It was, I kind of got caught into it a little bit, you know what I mean? It kind of took me for a little while, but then I kind of went back to more of the heavier stuff, too. But like you said, it was kind of a weird time and
yeah. But it was like the flip side of the coin. A lot of the bands I liked that was also like getting some attention was like, more stuff like Wolf Eyes and like Lightning Bolt, even though they've been around for a while and stuff. But it was like bands that stood out very unique in a different way that had the same amount of like, command live that it would for like a hardcore band.
Yeah, yeah.
But it was the hardcore, and that I really love that, and like Eraser Rada, Ellie the bassist. It was funny, like her old band in Lincoln. She's originally from Lincoln, Nebraska, and her old band XXY would play with my high school band Trike Press. Like they would come up in Plain City and we'd go down there. So I've known Ellie since like high school.
Yeah.
And then we both were on Trouble Man. We're like, no fucking way. So I really dug that, and that's kind of more of the route that I wanted to go. And it was like it was kind of like remind me of those fests that you would see in the mid to just like 94 to 97 of like here's Cave In, here's Braid, here's Coalesce,
yeah,
here's MK Ultra, like where it'd be like I don't want to call it pop punk because or emo because what you think of that now or how it's being described doesn't sound like Braid. Like pop bands are that sang or bands that sang more vocally at that time, like it still used the same equipment as like Coalesce or other
Yeah,
hardcore bands, like Marshalls and like Ampegs and such. You know what I mean? And like they were powerful live, but it was like it was so it was just it felt like it was kind of like a new version of that at that time. Like there was like these new kinds of like different sounding groups that was I don't know. Anyway, flip side of the rock resurgence, if you will.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, Blood Brothers was kind of like a band like that for me that kind of, had a heavier, and then they blew up. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
I love
I love those guys too.
I
Those
love
people are
I
so
love
good.
Blood Brothers. I talked to Jordan a little while ago too. Another great guy, and they.
I love that guy. Yeah, all those people in that band are such good people. We are when Zarathrustra got back together in our first tour, the first like week or so was with Orchid, Blood Brothers, and Red Scare.
Ooh.
So that was like that's how we all became friends,
Yeah.
and that was great. I mean that was spot on because I mean that first Blood Brothers 7-inch I bought that when I moved up here to Minneapolis, and it was what that period of time where like if you read a review in Heart Attack or something, if it mentioned Ulysses or Antioch Arrow or something like that, like I might like this.
Yeah.
And I took a chance on it, and I totally did.
And that
Like
that was on Second Nature too, which was kind of surprising to me
yeah,
because they're
yeah.
from the West Coast, and then Second Nature put out that first 7-inch, and I loved it too. Once I heard that, I was like, oh my god, this band is good. And then they just skyrocketed into a big band.
It was awesome. I really liked that and just seeing them live was great. It's the same thing with I was mentioning like with like race band and different things, but like live, it's just like it was if you like them recorded, like live was where you wanted to see it. Like
Yeah,
you're witnessed it.
yeah, definitely. Now, you said you took a little hiatus in between bit, like did you take time off after Chariots to kind of,
Mhm.
and then how long of a gap was that? And then I know you were in a few bands like Chabalo and Gore Seeker, and was it Total Bullshit was the or something like
Yeah,
that?
yeah. Bullshit. Blackthorne. Fucking cowards. Always doing something.
Yeah.
The thing that's been going, the thing that was going on the longest, I was doing this thing called Allen's. It was a two-piece. It was my friend Tim Allen and I'm Travis Allen, so Allen's.
Yeah.
And it was just all synths. It was all synths and everything. I just didn't want to be in a rock band at the time for a while. Like I just didn't want to be around that. And then I separated from it enough to eventually miss playing hardcore again. I was collaborating for a long time with a project called Marijuana Death Squads from here, which had my roommate at the time, Ryan Olson, who does Totally Gross National Product. They released everything from like one of the like a Lizzo record to like Policia. His wife is the vocalist of Policia. So I was collaborating with them a lot, which was like a mixture of like metal drummers to jazz drummers to people in the like hip hop scene,
Mm.
electronic scene, everything. It was just Ryan just wrangled people in, and it was like every Wednesday there'd be a free show at this place called Nick and Eddie's,
Yeah.
and you just clear out the back area of this restaurant, and whoever arrives, that's who you're going to be collaborating with. So I started doing a lot of like improvising stuff, collaborating. And I didn't think I would ever be able to do that. Like I thought you had to be some virtuoso type person, like. But that's what I was like building into like getting more of like my own gear, and started a band with my friends Jesse and Tim Glynn. It's called The Blight.
Mm.
That's probably been for 6 or 7 years now. It's all improvised as well. Tim's a brilliant drummer. He's played everything from like like death metal to like free jazz, if you will, whatever else. And then Jesse is just modular synths,
Yeah.
synths that he builds and everything, and it's powerful. It's fun. So I've been doing that for a long time. And at the same time, I was in a band called Blackthorne
Yeah.
with Bob, who I do Damien Records with. He used to be in Kill Sadie.
Oh, no kidding. Nice.
Yeah. Blackthorne was kind of like we wrote a lot. It's just like a bunch of short songs,
Yeah.
Like we had a bunch of songs that was about Police Academy characters. We had a bunch of songs on one release was just about a shark. It was like, but then eventually, like I was telling you at that time, it was like where some friends were dying and stuff. The perspective of the music and like actually kind of going in and actually writing lyrics about something.
Yeah.
It changed. It got a lot darker and fused in sometimes some elements of black metal and shit too. So It was fun. We ran its course. It was like 8 years, almost 9 years.
Yeah.
But we just recently broke up. We just didn't mention anything about it. So
Yeah, I was gonna ask about Blackthorne because, like you said, the beginning songs that you guys first worked on, like you said, were kind of fun and like the content was kind of fun, and then like you said, the full length that came out, I was gonna ask about the black metal aspect of it. The sound kind of changed a little bit. I mean, you guys always had an element of all different kinds of music in that.
traditional metal to a degree. You'd see like weird harmonies. It was we got when we were in a band briefly with Chabalo. I joined the band. It was like Bob, Jason, and Steve, and this guy Mickey. They had the band already started, and I joined, and it kind of like morphed a little bit when I got in there, so incorporating like keys and synths and stuff, and then that broke up, and Steve from Chabala became the guitarist, and my buddy Matt from my hometown, Sioux City, Iowa, played drums, and then Bob on bass. Mickey eventually joined. He plays drums and guitar and everything, and he played drums in Chabala. So his addition to the band made it like, a little more elements of like black metal on there, definitely.
Yeah,
a lot more crazier shit going on guitar, essentially.
Yeah, and everything that you guys put out on that band was on cassette as well. Not solely on cassette, but cassette. What kind of pushed you back into the cassette type of thing? I know it's popular nowadays, and it has been for the last like 5 years or so. Is that kind of the resurgence of cassette tapes now? Because like with me, I don't have a tape player, so I know it's gotten so popular lately. What was the thought process of just putting cassettes out too?
Well, Blackthorne actually only has 2 tapes. We have a 7-inch. We were on a 12-inch compilation. Then we had the full length, the vinyl.
Yeah.
And then the cassette version. Well, basically, it's just like it's even prior to COVID. Like it's really hard for me to ask a label to release vinyl for me if I'm in a band that doesn't tour.
Yeah.
Or even have really much of a following, except for like people locally around the area who are familiar with it or might enjoy it or whatever.
Yeah.
It's like I'm not going to ask anybody to sit on a bare minimum of even 300 or 500 because people weren't even really buying them that much unless you do have even a following.
Yeah.
It's just really expensive, So when we were shifting into like cassettes more, because the first 7-inch was out on Blood of the Young.
Yeah.
And so him offering as a friend that's how we were able to do that. Yeah, it was just because we weren't, we're not really touring or anything. And when I started Damien just as a thing, it was just like, just to put a name on something for demos,
Yeah.
Just like, well, we should give it like a catalog number just for the fuck of it. Eventually it was just like, after the full length came out, I was just in that mindset of like, I really enjoy getting the packaging and layout and working with the artist a lot. I love that wrapping up of like the full length with the recording, when you get the masters back, like that whole process, and you get it and you're stoked, and then you're like, okay, well, that's done. I mean, you play live, but it's like, I want to go back and do that. So that's the focus for me lately, has just been the label.
Yeah.
And like I said, and since now, especially, like there's over a year wait for vinyl. So it's again on a necessity. I never really dropped out of cassette since high school or since I was a little kid. Like there was always punk and noise labels that never stopped doing cassettes. It's just always been around. Same with like CDs. There's like those people who are like really like die hard about CDs and like microgenres of metal, noise, especially industrial, things like that.
Yeah.
So like I was just like, I wouldn't do CDs unless it wasn't for the right person. And now Ian's done 3 CDs.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So to answer your question, it's just kind of wherever it goes. I've been doing a lot of lathes. Lathes are fun. You know what you're getting into. Like, I'm not buying this thing that's like, I'm not expecting it to sound amazing, but at least you have the digital download and you have a physical copy. So I try to make packaging enough where it's like interesting or fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if people want to do a cassette, I know that people will enjoy it and they have a download of it. And
yeah.
It's a vessel to get this in someone's hands, at least. I would love more vinyl though, but it's just not in our cards for quite a while.
Yeah. I know the pressing plants are way, way, way behind it. And it sucks for bands that are actually trying to get vinyl out now and sitting on music that that's, a year and a half ago they recorded, and that now they're still sitting
Yeah.
waiting for it to get released. I feel the frustration of that, definitely. And finally, shows are starting to happen again, which is like still a scary thing, you know.
Yeah, especially depending on what state you're in or what city you're in and what, like, where they're traveling from, like I want to be able to live my life, but at the same time, I'm gonna be I'm being smart about things,
Yeah,
Like I went to a few shows and they were outdoor shows,
yeah,
and support some friends bands and like, and since they can't have as many people in as they would like, finally like the price went up a little bit.
yeah,
You know what I mean? It's always like the $5 shows, like no, now they're $10 and $20.
yeah, yeah,
It's just like, and it's just to help out more with like,
yeah, definitely.
that mindset of like keeping it at $5. I get, but it's like, you should ask for some more.
Yeah,
At this point,
yeah,
it's 2021.
yeah, exactly. Now, the Blight, is that your current band, or are you working with some other things too, project wise?
The Blight primarily, we just come in and out, and then Half Dead with Joel, and then I was Total Bullshit is still a thing. That's with my buddy Dave. He's in this band called Getting Stabbed from here. It's a pretty cool power violence band.
Yeah.
And Brittany, she used to be in that band Creep Stare that was on Youth Attack. She played bass on it. So it's kind of like we might have like this revolving door of like the rhythm section, and it's just Dave and I. So we might go on agoraphobic nosebleed like route with a drum machine on one recording, and then the next set of songs could have a full band. So
Yeah.
it's kind of putting everything back to a low gear at this point and just doing things at a steady pace that feels comfortable.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, definitely. I always ask too. When you first heard the term screamo, what did you think? Because I mean, we're older, and
I hated it. But what do you do?
yeah,
Yeah, I didn't like it. It just sounded dumb. Same thing when like Ian Mackay addressed like being called emo core or emo back in when he was in what was the band after? Why am I blanking?
Fugazi.
Embrace.
Oh, Embrace. Yes, yes, yeah.
Yeah. What do you call it? Isn't every band emotional? So, get a point. But yeah, I don't know. It's if you like it, that's great. The title kind of like dubbing something, things like that. It feels like it just cheapens it. I feel that a lot of bands that probably get dubbed screamo have a lot more to offer than what you would think in your head is screamo.
Yeah.
Because I sure as hell don't think that song is a screamo band, but maybe it is to somebody else.
Yeah, yeah. It's so broad too, because you could people are asking Alexandria screamo and Five Finger Disc.
I have no idea who that is.
I get like what is it? Hot topic bands. You know what I mean? Those bands are kind of like dubbed screamo now. So it's such a broad range.
They can have it. It's awesome. They can have it. Pass the torch. Wiped clean of this one.
Well, the new term is scrams. Have you heard that?
I've heard it, but I haven't. What is scrams?
Scrams is like basically what screamo was, when we first heard it. Like bands like, Satia Gets Lopped in there, Jerome's Dream, City Caterpillar, that type of, it scrams now to the younger generation.
Wow. That's cool. Yeah, I don't know. I'm so in my own bubble, and I'm really happy with it. And it's not to be ignorant, because I seek out so much music, and it's like a lot of the stuff I release on Damien is like, they're people in their like 20s, and 30s. And I'm 44. I'm going to be 45 early next year. So
yeah,
I'm deeply invested in finding new music, especially from like the youth, because that's when shit's like,
yeah,
you go for it. Definitely,
Yeah.
like you kind of get locked in your ways in most cases. The older you get, a lot of times, you don't want to like give credit where, like, I don't know, like you're saying with scrams, it's like, I mean, there's a whole new set of like groups that is being defined as screamo or scrams now that I have no clue about, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
And you just have to wonder, like, of all these different kinds of like genres and stuff that they're listening to, just because of how accessible everything is currently. And I think going back to what we were saying with like why that certain era was kind of special is like there was message boards and such, and there was eventually MySpace, but it there's still a snail mail element. So I remember, I don't know if you recall, there was the More Than Music Festival that was in 2000, it might have been 2001. That was the first time they offered using your credit card online to like get tickets. And like everybody for some reason understood it as like, what? You can only get tickets online? I ain't putting my credit card online. It was still that mindset, like, fuck that. And so like it was so horribly attended. And like, no, you can. There's still gonna be tons at the door.
Yeah, yeah.
You can pay in cash still. It's fine. But yeah, it was like that was one of the sickest lineups too, because it was us, Bride and No No, Thrones, Locust, Suicide played, High and Fire. Like it was insane.
Yeah.
It was just and there was just like 200 people there in this big room.
Really? No kidding.
Everybody thought and was afraid of putting their card information online.
That's crazy. That is.
Yeah, so you don't have that, So it's like even like if someone just was on what is it, they're even on like Bandcamp and they're seeing all the sales fly at the bottom of these like where the rabbit hole you can lead. This person bought this.
Yeah.
Check that. It's cool because there's just all these new takes on like hardcore now or like electronic or whatever it is because they're being there's just information overload online now and that can be the silver lining in some of that. You hear some pretty interesting shit.
Yeah, I've been talking too about kind of like a resurgence of the hardcore scene, like in this vein. You know what I mean? For newer bands, I've been listening to a lot of Canadian bands as of late, and just the sound quality and like the energy and the feeling of it has really like taken me for these younger kids that are putting out amazing stuff. I feel and even like shows that are happening, I just feel like it's almost like a resurgence of back at like late 90s, early 2000s. And they really have something special going on right now because there's so many good bands. I think there was a lull for a long time and now it's kind of kicked back where there's so many good bands and not every band sounds the same. It's not like a cookie cutter, screamo band. It's everybody's kind of branching out and doing their own thing, like Soul Glow or Gouge Away, or there's like a bunch of bands like Karloff and Diana Krall's up in Canada that are doing like.
It seemed like Portrayal of Guilt too, kind of was like in the hardcore realm, like even like a lot of the art, like I'd recognize, like holy shit, like this kind of reminds me of a throwback to '90s. I don't want to call them like a hardcore band of that era, but
yeah,
it's when you first started, it seemed like it was kind of influenced with something like that. I don't know, I could be wrong.
Yeah, Closet Witch. That's another great band too. Yeah.
Joe, what's up, dude? He's a fellow Suicidian from originally.
Yeah, Closet Witch is great too. That's what I'm saying. Like these newer bands are just kind of, I'm catching the fever of it again, and like being, I'm going to be 50 at the end of this year, so it's kind of
sure.
I still feel the feeling and energy of listening to new bands as well as like back in the day old stuff as well. So I always wanted to ask if you were into like newer bands as well.
Yeah. A lot of the like hardcore and stuff and punk I've been really getting into is like a lot of stuff on like Iron Lung, still Youth Attack. Like I just like some like Vile Gash will still want to be one of my favorite like current bands just because it's just I like it's yeah. When you just need that little vent of frustration to get blown out in like 10 seconds,
yeah.
Vile Gash, But yeah, like Iron Lung and like and stuff on like Youth Attack and shit. There's so many others, but like Convulse Records and shit, like there's kind of like I've been getting the more hardcore that sounds like a throwback to just older hardcore from like 85, 86, and they're doing their takes on it. Really cavemanish sounding like hardcore I really love. I don't know, it's like I think like at times where I would hear that when I was like in the 90s, I was way more into like wanting to hear something like closer to Angel Hair or Click Attack Atawi, and I didn't want to hear something that sounded as primitive as that.
Yeah.
Now it's like I can't get enough. And it's like
did you get
I love it.
The Youth Crew phase with like Youth of Today and Judge and those bands like Gorilla Biscuits and Sick of It All?
I love Judge and Gorilla Biscuits. Gorilla Biscuits is the shit. I fucking love Biscuits. Like when they put out that one I think it was Super 7 or whatever that had like the blue 7-inch with the I was like, I was just like I went on the site and it was just like sold out, like just looking at it and it sold out. that thing was so cool. I really liked them a lot, and I was super into like 7 seconds, like early 7 seconds and stuff. Like, um, yeah, all that kind of old school youth crew shit I eat up because it doesn't sound like, but it does harken back to this early era of what I was mentioning, like why I liked Anthrax a lot in
Yeah,
junior high. Like, even though they weren't necessarily part of the hardcore scene, they loved so much from the hardcore scene, you know?
yeah.
Like, because when I lived in New York, there was people like, I was there back in that day. They weren't fucking hardcore, you know? Like, they might have put New York hardcore on the shirts. But yeah, I love that era, man. It's fun.
Yeah,
It's just
Anthrax was always a fun band for me too. I think like that was one of the first maybe thrash shows that I got to see when I was a kid. Was I saw Anthrax when what was it? Spreading the Disease had
Spreading Disease. Oh, fuck. That's one of my favorite records by them.
and Metal Church opened the show for them, which was which was really cool. I was at the
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's amazing. I didn't see I didn't get to see Anthrax till the Clash of the Titans tour. You know, like I lived in Iowa, so I couldn't. There was no way I'm getting to like Minneapolis or Kansas City to see Among the Living. I didn't. I found out about the Among the Living era by unfortunately first through I'm the Man, then the Indians video.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were like, there was a Headbangers Ball special. They were wrapping up that tour, and they were going through like New York. You know, like here's where we go buy our comics. You know, but yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, that was a cool era. I used to wear a hat that was, bent up that said engine on it, and
Man.
then I got into like SOD because Scott and kind of went into SOD and stuff like that. So that kind of got me into like harder stuff too and more hard.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what got me into like grind. You know, that's when I was like, God was really getting into like Napalm Death
Mm,
and like Repression and such. Like, just like the nastier the bass, I loved it. I was just like, that was sold. You know, like
yeah,
because I was so into like the sound of like stuff that was on Touch and Go, like the bass, the Mac McNeely bass, which is still a great sound.
yeah,
But then it's just like this is just gonna be exit out, and I just want to hear, you know, like rather hear that now.
yeah. Well, I don't want to keep you for too long. So usually at the end of these talks, I do a rapid fire with everybody. So you ready for some rapid fire?
Okay, sure.
I know some people it racks their brains trying to think of like certain things because favorites could be, it's kind of like a fickle thing for some people. But my first question, all-time favorite New England punk hardcore band for you ever? Punk hardcore band, screamo, whatever, the heavy music from New England, which means like, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New Hampshire.
Oh God. Oh.
I mean,
I'm gonna. I pass. I'm not even gonna attempt because I'm gonna 2 seconds later I'm gonna be like, damn it.
well, I hear, what I always hear? I hear a lot of Converge. I hear a lot of Orchid. I hear a lot of Daughters. SSD. I hear a lot of. I've heard Slapshot.
Yeah, yeah. There's too many eras, man. Fuck. I see. This is why I can never be like on like some game show. You know, I feel horrible. It's like the question is like, what's your favorite food? I'm like, tacos is my favorite. I'll just say it. Tacos.
Nice. Well, if you do think of something in the back of your head, just chime in whenever you can. My second question: what was the first punk hardcore show you attended ever? Like a real punk hardcore show, not like a Battle of the Bands type thing.
Oh man, I believe it would have been Jesus Christ. It had to be in Sioux Falls. I mean, there was tons of punk in Sioux City, but if it's like a hardcore punk band, it probably would have been in Sioux Falls, like something like Avail.
Mm.
Yeah, I think it had to be something like that, or like Shelter, you know, or something. You know what I mean? Like if it was like an actual like hardcore show, because I've been to like hardcore shows that was just like like local Sioux Falls bands, like
Yeah.
Floodplain and stuff like that. It's just Sioux City never got hardcore, and if we at all, like you'd have to go to Lincoln or
Yeah.
you know, Sioux Falls, but Omaha and like Sioux City, we just never got hardcore.
Mm.
So I was a late bloomer by the time I got to see a hardcore show or go to a hardcore show because it was fucking fun as fuck, you know, like I really liked it. Yeah, it just felt different. It felt a lot more fun and engaged.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. My next question: what was your favorite all-time show that you played? You can give me a few because obviously like Book of Dead Names, Song of Z, Blackthorne. You've been in a bunch of different bands. So give me like what was like some of the most favorite shows for you to play live?
Well, that one that I mentioned, it was at the More Than Music Fest with High and Fire, Locust,
Mm.
Thrones, Bride of No. That was a really good Suicide. Then it was another one with and another More Than Music Festival. It was because we were touring with Orchid, Blood Brothers, Red Scare, and it was like the Faint played as
Mm.
well. We were friends with the Faint from Omaha. Um, Jesus. There was a cool Damod with Reversal Man at 403 Chaos.
Yeah.
We did a show with Misery and Dillinger 4 at First Avenue Main Room. Chariots did a show with Plot to Blow Up the Eiffel Tower, Big Business, and Blood Brothers in the Main Room, First Avenue.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's been some pretty sick ones, but a lot of the fest ones were my favorite because you're just clearly, it's just you cramming in all these people and just happen to be the crossroads of this tour, and
Yeah.
there's definitely certain eras where those bills were pretty sick.
Yeah. Now, do you remember, like Pete was mentioning, the Tin Can Full of Dreams Fest up in Providence?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah, I mentioned that. I was trying to remember who we were playing with. I might have been with Black Cat 13 on that night because we were doing shows with them. That was fun. I remember. I think that was like, I know Reversal was playing one of those nights. Yeah, God, that was a great show.
Yeah.
Those people who did those shows up there were sick. Like,
Yeah.
They were really cool people.
He'd always put on great fests, so definitely. My next question: what was your all-time favorite hardcore punk show you attended that you didn't play? That you kind of just went to a show to go see, and it was like one of your all-time favorite shows that you got to see?
One of them was just really fun, and it was at the Fireside Bowl, and it was with Reversal Man, Crimson Curse, a couple other bands. It was after a Detroit Fest that it was like that had like Cave In and Meali. Do you remember Meali?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. It's my brain, seriously, I get so overwhelmed because there's been just a mess of shows. A lot of the hardcore shows that go to that I just go to attend were in like Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
Like they had so many great shows there. Like and it was because they just let so many different people book. You just had to stay in communication with everybody else who was also booking, But Sioux Falls, like you could just you can just go through time and just go through flyers, and there was a lot of amazing shows there.
Yeah. Now, do you obviously, a lot of people don't write down the shows they played. Do you? And if you did you make a diary? And if you didn't, do you wish you made a diary where you wrote down all the shows that you, played in?
Yeah. I did all the booking primarily, and then eventually Julie from she's part of Earthquaker, her and Jamie do Earthquaker Devices.
Yeah.
She booked tours for Zarathrustra as well. But I have all the books with the numbers, the routes, who it was going to be with. So I have all of that actually in a couple suitcases.
Oh, that's awesome.
I would always start off writing stuff down, but by like week 3, I'm like, we're out for 6 weeks. By week 3, I started to kind of like, fuck, I should have. But I just made sure to always like keep a flyer for every show that we played. And like I said, I have 2 suitcases and actually a trunk full of that shit.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's my boy.
That guy. What a buddy.
That's my back. All right, I'll keep going. I'm a huge movie fan. I always ask this. What was the last movie you watched?
Last movie I watched. Yeah, I don't really watch too many newer films. I really like watching a lot of documentaries, but I seriously just think I just rewatched Ghostbusters. I think that was the last movie I watched again. I honestly, because I haven't been to a theater in ages. My last partner was like a huge movie buff and like and television show buff and reality show buff, and so there was just always something playing all the time.
Yeah.
And I felt like after I detached from doing that for a while, like it's hard to get back into it because I don't know who the fuck is who anymore or anything. So I just been kind of revisiting some old films I hadn't seen in a while because I wanted to see the new Ghostbusters just to fucking see it. But I was like, I haven't seen the first one for a minute. So I think that is actually the last film I watched. It's such an oldie.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to mention the new movie with Paul Rudd that's coming out, which looks, it looks decent. You know, that's you know, obviously it might not stand up to the test of time of the,
Yeah,
but
definitely not comparing them. And it's the same with the 2016 one. It's just like it's just in this universe, and I'm just gonna watch it. That's about it. You know, I don't get too heated about it. Or it's like with Star Wars, I can't do that shit. You know, like when people get so invested and then they get so let down.
yeah,
It's like something special happened years ago. You know, like it's I just kind of learned to not really get too invested on that kind of stuff where it's like I feel sorry for so many of my friends. They get so let down by so many different films that they're so passionate about like franchises, you know, and
yeah.
I'm just you're like, sorry, man.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Star Wars because I was kind of the same way until Mandalorian came out, and that kind of hooked me back into it. Like that series was really, really good, which I was like surprising because going in I was very skeptical. I was like, I don't know, and then watching that series on Disney.
Disney went pretty buck with all the Star Wars licensing, haven't they? But I've seen just from like what people have been saying online, like they pull a lot more, or at least it did at some point, from like the graphic novels or something.
Yeah,
Or am I okay? That's cool.
yeah, definitely. All right, I'll keep going. I always, you know, it's October, and I always ask this anyways, but your all-time favorite horror movie?
Ooh. I honestly, it sounds really obvious, but the first Halloween, and it's only because that was one of the first times I actually had like a fever dream when I saw that. And I saw it a few years late, you know, down the road. Like I think it might have been in the mid '80s, and I watched it at a friend's house who he had a VCR, and his mom loved horror, and she would always like go to like this place called James Drug. It was a pharmacy, but they had a little tiny nook where it's just shit tons of just obscure films, a
Yeah,
lot of horror films. So she just would get a stack, you know, and they'd have specials on Fridays for certain sticker colored ones,
yeah, yeah,
and it would just be all horror. So we'd stay up all night, eat pizza, and watch horror. But we got to Halloween, and probably would have been the fourth movie we watched that night. And I saw how late it was, and we wrapped it up, and I had to run back downstairs to where I live.
yeah,
And it was that I had my door open. It was like creaked open. It was right when your eyes adjust to the darkness.
yeah,
And that's all I couldn't get that mask out of my mind because that was like a lot of things. It was so much shot in the dark.
yeah,
And just seeing that William Shatner mask. And it wasn't anything special, like anything crazy happened in the film. It was just the mood of each shot was creepy.
yeah.
I felt that was pretty impacting, you know, like that stuck with me, you know, like just that's like, and so from then on for years, I just would have to keep doors shut because I was just like, don't ask me. Halloween movie fucked me up as a kid, but I'm fine now. I'm over that. But Halloween that first one was really good. And I mean, I go down the list with like Friday the 13th because they're fucking fun, you know, like they're classic. And like the first Nightmare on Elm Street, the campiness, but it's still dark. They didn't show Freddy as much.
Yeah, yeah,
Big fan of that era, which a lot of people are, of course. You know, like
yeah, definitely.
not seeing him as even though that like Dream Warriors was badass, that was fun.
Yeah.
Like that was a fun film. You know, like I won't lie.
Plus, I mean, and plus the humor aspect of a lot of that, like what Freddie was saying and doing, like
Yeah,
in the further.
like he could be hosting a TV show, or like you know, like he should be a talk show host or a game show host. You know what I mean? Like the Morton Downey Jr. of like Nightmares, essentially, or something.
I was bummed out that Robert Englund didn't do the remake. Like, it's kind of bummed out that he wasn't Freddie in the remake that they did.
Yeah, the whole thing. I mean, I could see. I mean, I watched it once and it was fine, but I kind of it was weird. I usually don't like when they do like a restructuring of things, you know, like when they reboot it and it's like now this person kind of we tweaked it a little bit, but the way they made him look more genuinely like a burn victim
Yeah.
was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And like the lack of like nose and ear, like
Yeah.
but the completely opposite of Robert Englund because he has such a prominent nose,
Yeah.
you know. And I like that because I have a broken nose. Like my nose has been broken 3 times, you know, like breaking up fights, being in a fight, you know. But so I really dug that. I was just like, hey, he's got a screwed up nose too. So I like Freddie.
Yeah. Nice. I'm a big hip hop guy too, boom bap style. But if you've been listening to hip hop lately, what have you been listening to?
I've been going back through a lot of MF Doom.
Mm.
I'm always a really huge MF Doom fan. I like a lot of like early Mos Def a lot. Early Outcast is really good. Can always go back and listen to Tribe Called Quest.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's I get thrown some stuff by newer artists, and I'm really bad at names, but there's one dude I know that just put out a side B first and then side A, just all digital, and like I can't remember the guy's name, but I'll have to get back to you on that one. But fuck, yeah, like yeah, I'm blanking. But most Def, or yeah, most Def and MF Doom a lot currently.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, it's been such a tragedy in the last 2, 3 years from all these deaths from like some of my favorite rappers like MF Doom and Shock G from Digital Underground and Biz Markie.
Oh, I know. Yeah, yeah. That was some junior high memories for me with Digital Underground, big time.
Double. I don't know if you know people under the stairs with Double K. Like he passed away too. There's just been like so many deaths lately in that hip hop community that's been really sad because like some of those are DMX is another one. Like it's just been like one right after another. Fight from Tribe Called Quest, that was a while ago. Prodigy from Mobb Deep. It's just been like very sad seeing my heroes kind of just passing away. It's been tough couple of years, honestly.
Growing up and having a lot of like friends or connections or liking a lot of artists and stuff, it gets intense when we get to be older for sure.
Yeah.
It's just like
Yeah, and
yeah.
COVID at all either. It's been a tough time. So that's kind of what spurred me into doing these talks. Is kind of it was for a while, and I was like, I wasn't the most talkative guy. So like you see my first couple talks, I'm kind of a greenhorn at it. You know what I mean? And then obviously I got better as I went on. But it was kind of out of boredom and I had anxiety, so not social anxiety, but I was kind of a quiet guy. Like I played in screamo bands and stuff like that, but I wasn't very talkative guy like at shows or the scene and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so this kind of pushed me into something different, and I've really been enjoying it, and it's been a great experience for me mentally, and just talking to the people that I love the music that they put out. So it's been like a great time for me.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad you. I'm happy you asked me.
My last question: favorite song to play live with Song of Z, the Book of Dead Names, and give me like a Blackthorne song too. Like favorite song to play live for those three bands.
I really liked playing One Strike at Romance. Science was always really good, especially when people were familiar with it.
Yeah.
It was like it was fun. It was kind of a no-brainer live. It was a good live song.
Yeah.
Book of Dead Names. The How to Become an Assassin. I believe that's the first song off the 7-inch. We just nicknamed it Blocka Blocka because it's do 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 do. So that's a lot of the times how I remembered the names, and then remembered the songs, and then it was like the names came after.
Yeah.
Blackthorne. It would have been this newer song that's not out yet.
Oh.
Actually, there was a bunch of songs I really liked to play back in the time, but like there's this new song specifically that I really like. It's really hard. Like it was just fun,
Yeah, Unabashed Failure, I think it'd probably be my favorite Blackthorne song like that. Like, I definitely like that song. It's funny, you mentioned Science. I think that was the first song I ever heard, Song of Z, like, when I got exposed to it. And I was like, holy shit, what is this band? I got to try to get everything I can possible.
It became a POS song. If you're familiar with POS, he was on Rhyme Sayers, rapper.
Oh.
Yeah, it's called Yeah Right, and it's the name of the song, and it's just science,
Oh.
like completely sampled as like the background of the whole bit.
Oh,
funny.
Awesome. Oh.
Yeah, you have to check it out. It's funny.
Yeah, it's funny. I like that whole Book of Dead album, but One Last Grasp obviously is like probably one of my favorite songs. But what's the song with the piano? This one has the alternate
ending. Yeah, our buddy Matt Rizak, who played bass on that album, named most of the songs because they were just getting wrapped up, even with lyrics in the studio. Because I was in Zarathrustra when that record came out, so it was like Nick on Blood of the Young just pushing us to, because it was going to be a 7-inch. It's going to be the final Book of Dead Name 7-inch.
Yeah.
But he's like, no, fuck it. Like, write more songs, and I'm going to do a full length. So that's when we had Becky on drums. she was in Attica Underground, the band that was going to do a split with Zarathrustra back in the day.
Yeah.
And she was in Cardinal Sin as well. I don't know if you were familiar with Cardinal Sin.
Mm.
That had TV in it for a minute. James, who was in Cadillac Blindside. So it's kind of like Cadillac Blindside type of stuff. But yeah, two drummers on that one. So you'll notice like they're mixed in with one another. Like that's why the recordings were some of the voice sounds not as screamy as the other ones.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that song, like I said, the piano at the end of that song, it's kind of more of your melodic song out of that whole album too. It's kind of like
yeah.
Song that you would think of. It's not so chaotic and stuff like that, which is really like a good, alternative to what, all that screaminess and spastic sounding.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. It's like when we started Book of Dead Names, Andy normally played like a lot more like pop punk or like something more like propaganda maybe. And then I worked with James, and he was in Cadillac Blindside, and he was just a fucking good guitarist, and he got into a lot of things, and I wanted to pull in people from some different areas that would complement like something that would be so, spastic and crazy, and
yeah.
So by the time we've been a band for a minute, like you would hear more melody, like you were saying, and that, it's just because we're just kind of showing it a little more on that stuff. But yeah, I think that was definitely a James song, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Now, out of all the catalog that you have, I mean, which is pretty immense catalog, did you keep everything? Did you keep all the 7 inches? You keep the CD?
I gave away so much shit. I have probably a third, maybe half of the stuff that I have, but I just wanted people to have things, so I would just give them. Like, I really don't have a whole lot of stuff. Like, I don't even have like the European 7-inch by Zarathrustra. There's certain like variations of stuff. Like, I don't have like the German pressings. I don't have a lot of things like that. But I just wanted, I don't know. I just wanted other people to have it.
Yeah. Now, was that something you would want to get like in time? Like maybe you could find it on Discogs or whatever stuff like.
Yeah, I have thought about buying the European 7-inch again. Like I think I got it from Jamie at one point. He gave me a copy. I don't know what happened to it. Probably was drunk and gave it away or something one night. Which is like really festive. I'm like, you can have this, man. Yeah. And like 2 years later, like I give that away. So
yeah,
I thought about getting it again.
Yeah,
it's funny. I really like that era. So it's different than the first 7-inch, which I love, but that era was cool. It was, I don't know, we were just kind of trying out some different things.
Yeah, and it's funny with shirts too, because back in the day, I I was a lot smaller back in the day in the late 90s, and so everything that I owned back then was like youth larges, and now I'm like 200 pounds and yeah. Larges and extra larges, and I kept a few, a bunch of my shirts, but I gave them all to my daughters because this.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But was that kind of like the same thing with you? Do you save like shirts but they're so small that you can't wear them?
Yeah, like I got a Bronson shirt that it's just kind of like, like I better not eat anything with rice today. It's just, but I gave away a lot of my shirts when I went to Europe. I would use a lot of these shirts that I get from bands because we would just trade, like my shirt for your shirt and whatever. But I brought a lot of like Blood Brothers ones and like Orchid and stuff, and brought them in when I would just sit and just bullshit with some kid who just was on the train for 6 or 7 hours, some even like a half a day just to come see us.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of kids from Croatia came up to see us in like Germany one show, and if they're like they have to wait overnight, just like to get the next train home, and it was just like, here, have the shirt. You talked about how you like Blood Brothers so much, and there's like a shirt that's only for their U.S. tours and stuff.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
There's the screen printing stuff, but I don't know. Like I liked that, because I had people like that when I was younger that did things, and I just kind of like, people remember that. I did,
Yeah.
Just like don't be a dick, like just share, because then you got another person who's like to talk to about the stuff with, than just like hoarding it all.
Yeah. I was in a band.
Some gatekeeper type stuff, you know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I was in a band called High School Sweethearts, and I don't have anything we put out. We put out like a bunch of shirts. I don't have any of that because, like you said, I just gave stuff away because I'm like, yeah, it'll come back around if I really need it. And now, and then I was searching for like the EP that we put out, and I can't find it at all. I was like asking all my friends, and one of them was like, I think I have it, like, but it was, I'm like you, I just gave everything away. You know what I mean? If somebody wanted it, I was like, even if it was like the only shirt that I had of my own band, I was like, yeah, I don't care. Like, here you go. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did really good about keeping with a lot of it. After like moving a lot, that kind of also helped. Like, oh, you can have this. It's no big deal. You know, like I played those songs enough.
yeah, definitely. So lastly, I just want to see if you wanted to plug anything that you got going on, maybe like label wise or band wise or anything like that that you want to like let people know about.
Yeah. I mean, like I'm not really doing anything that's like Zarathrustra or Book of Dead Names or anything, but like my main focus right now has just been with Damien Records. We do small run stuff. And it's a pretty wide range of eclectic things from like industrial power electronics to like power violence.
Mm.
Like if people like Internal, that's Trevor from Woundman's project. Did a thing for like Sidetrack, Jay from Sidetrack and stuff like just so it ranges from like really eclectic things like that.
Yeah.
Sissy Spacek, Limspin, that kind of realm. The Blight we'll be recording, I'm sure, again fairly soon, which is just more again like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's chaotic. It's got live drums. It's got a bunch of crazy effects. That's about it. But on Damien, you can hear a lot of the shit on Damien Records.
Yeah. Now, Damien Records, does that you have a Bandcamp for Damien Records?
Yep. 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 Bandcamp. It's on Facebook and shit. But we're more active on Instagram and Bandcamp. So you can find us on here and on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
So.
And lastly, I wanted to ask about the Book of Dead Names, like on like streaming services, because I use Spotify and the story unfolds isn't on that. Is there ever a chance that that could get on Spotify or something like that?
Maybe it's not. I thought it was. Steve from Init Records just uploaded everything by Zarathrustra on Spotify and Apple Music.
Yep.
And I think I could, if it's not up there, I swore it was, but if it's not, I can definitely, it can happen. Yeah. I'm sure Steve will be able to do it for sure. I'll ask him now.
I've been searching for a while, and I'm pretty sure it's not on there. But
oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know shit.
I want to thank you so much for taking time out. Yeah, for sure. Really, I was stoked on this conversation, and just thank you so much for taking time out to talk to me.
Yeah, thank you for being supportive, and thanks for everyone who chimed in and talked about shows that we played. I was trying to catch everyone, so I'm like, oh fuck yeah. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. That was rad out. Thank you.
The shitty thing about the comments is once I save this, the comments go away. So sometimes I'll make comments and then I can't go back to see what people are actually like asking or saying or stuff like that, which sucks. I wish Instagram would keep the comments just like on the thing. But that being said, I always throw this up on YouTube as well. So I'll send a link. I usually do it in like 3 or 4 days. I'll throw it up on YouTube and I'll send you the link to that too.
Awesome. Sounds good, man.
Hey, have a great day. Thank you again for taking time out. And definitely let's stay in touch, man.
Yeah, you know it. I'll send you some shit.
All right, brother. Thank you.
All right, take care.
Bye.